It is a garden unlike any other.
The garden here is really a museum of plants.
A colorful kaleidoscope of over 1 million flowers, ferns, and a forest.
The garden has a kind of, I would say, a kind of ineffable charm.
Go behind the scenes for a rare look inside a botanical archive that is preserving the legacy of history's greatest ecological explorers.
Here's a specimen that was collected by Charles Darwin.
And discover a world-class science and research program that is unlocking the secrets of the plant kingdom.
How is it that we have maybe 400,000 species of plants? How did that happen? Why did it happen? And where did it happen?
A place where visitors of the next generation get closer to nature.
Seeing it through children's eyes sometimes makes you realize it's very simple, but it's very, very important.
All come together at one of the city's most dynamic cultural institutions.
We have many, many layers to what we accomplish. We're not just a beautiful place.
Treasures of New York, the New York Botanical Garden, takes you on an exclusive tour where you'll be amazed at what lies beneath this historic landscape.
This is a super long carrot.
This program is made possible by Louis B. and Louise Hirschfeld Coleman, and Rosalind P. Walter. And now, from the New York Botanical Garden, here's Sigourney Weaver.
Standing here surrounded by a lush green rainforest, it's hard to believe I'm actually in the Bronx. And yet, underneath this crystalline glass house, as well as throughout the grounds of the renowned New York Botanical Garden, it's impossible not to feel completely transported from the bustling New York City streets into a world of plants alive with wonder.
From winter to spring, summer, and fall, there is always something glorious and new to experience at the New York Botanical Garden. It's a destination that delights the senses and opens up a world of imagination. Spanning over 250 acres, the garden is an oasis, as well as one of the great cultural institutions of New York City and a National Historic Landmark. For over 120 years, it has been a haven for city dwellers looking to escape urban life, finding refuge in the tranquility of nature.
I think almost everyone loves nature. I mean, people come to the garden really they look for peace, for a place of no stress.
But this is not merely a public park. For here, you will find one of the largest and most stunning collections of plants in the world, with specialized gardens, sweeping landscapes, and an ancient forest. It is also a scientific institution at the forefront of botanical study.
We are one of the world's centers for botanical research, and our scientists are naming 60 to 80 new species a year.
And across all ages, the garden has served as an open-air classroom, eliciting moments of wonder and discovery.
They understand how lettuce and tomatoes and peppers grow. And it's really incredible to understand what your natural world gives you.
Educating and inspiring the public about the natural world has been the garden's mission since its founding.
You have the public function, which is to provide a beautiful place for people to come and enjoy themselves and learn about plants. But also we're a big, major plant research and conservation institution.
Gregory Long oversees the entire botanical garden, guiding it through the 21st century while preserving its legacy. It was the late 1800s, and New York City was a booming, industrious place where legendary tycoons were erecting shrines of culture to rival those in Europe.
They knew what the cities of Europe were like in terms of their cultural and educational institutions, and they thought New York City should emulate those institutions in those cities.
In the summer of 1888, Nathaniel Lord Britton and his wife Elizabeth, both botanists and members of New York City's elite academic community, traveled to England to visit the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew.
And they were swept away by it. They were swept away by the beauty of the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew.
When the couple returned, they were determined that New York City should have a great botanical garden of its own. They spent years fundraising to establish the garden. Finally, in the spring of 1891, the state of New York incorporated the New York Botanical Garden. The founding board included the likes of J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, and Cornelius Vanderbilt. Nathaniel Lord Britton led the team as the garden's founding director.
They loved plants. They thought people should all love plants as much as they did. They thought that New York City school children and families should be learning about plants.
The first task was to find the perfect site. The search brought the founders to the northern portion of Bronx Park, and according to the garden's chief horticulturalist, it was this ancient forest which caught their attention.
They would walk through the forest and they would see native wildflowers, and they would see huge old oaks and hemlocks and tulip trees and sweet gums. And they would have been like kids in a candy store.
The forest was bisected by the Bronx River and surrounded by fertile fields and orchards. For these naturalists, it was paradise.
They had a slice of nature in New York City that would serve as the perfect foundation for the creation of an institution devoted to documenting, preserving, and celebrating the beauty of plants and nature.
They picked this very beautiful, complicated, picturesque site, which is very, very incredibly labor-intensive. It's sort of imperial in scale.
Britton and the founders set about designing a plan to display the world's plants. The initial layout of the grounds was drawn by Calvert Vaux, the co-designer of Central Park. The founders expanded his plan to include detailed gardens and plant collections.
Not just the native plants of the old-growth forest, but plants from Asia, plants from Europe, plants from Africa. And to do so, they created systematic plant collections planted across the landscape surrounding the forest.
And they planned for 2 new buildings, a museum and a conservatory, each serving distinct roles in the garden's cultural identity.
One represented the academic and the research function of the garden, and one represented the public education aspect of the work of the institution.
First to go up was the museum building, a neo-Renaissance structure to house the garden's laboratories, as well as its collection of books and dried plants. 24 tulip trees were planted along the museum's entranceway, which have grown into signatures of the garden. Today, it is known as the Library Building and contains over 1 million botanical artifacts and books.
We like to call ourselves the largest botanical and horticultural library in the world under one roof.
Next came the Glass Conservatory, designed by Lord & Burnham, America's leading glasshouse design firm at the time. Its cast iron and steel frame holds 17,000 custom-made panes of glass, each only about 1/8 of an inch thick. Completed in 1902, this temperature-controlled glass house enabled horticulturalists to grow and observe exotic species in their natural habitats.
You couldn't travel to South America so easily as you could do these days. And if you're studying any kind of plant material, you needed a place to really bring it and store it and learn about it. But also, you can showcase all these plants so the public could come here and learn all about them.
Today, the Crystal Palace encompasses an entire acre under glass, with 11 galleries representing 5 distinct climate zones.
The conservatory is my baby.
Francisca Coelho is the caretaker for the majestic conservatory and all 13,000 plants that live within.
I have plants that I have grown from seed, that I have seen them to maturity.
Coelho welcomes visitors to come see the world, from arid deserts to tropical rainforests.
This is a little Tillandsia cyanea. The flower is almost finished, but it's really, really pretty blue flower. So can you imagine collecting this plant and seeing it bloom for the first time? How fascinating that must be for somebody. It's a Brazilian palm with these very long, long leaves. They get to be about 20 feet tall. It's Atelier. Many people who never get to travel. But you can travel in the botanical garden, in the conservatory, and feel like you're anywhere in the tropics and get that feeling and understanding of why plants are so important. This plant is called Ceratostema rowii. It actually looks like, I always think of human hair when I look at it. It's really so pretty. Thunbergia, the clock vine, another climbing plant, really pretty. So these are epiphytic ferns that grow up on trees in the tropics. Many of them are from tropical Africa, Madagascar, that region. These are living stones that live among rocks in a South African desert, so they grow very arid and a little bit of a challenge to grow. It's two leaves together as the plant grows. So basically, if you look down at it, you will see that there's these two little fat leaves that are colored, and you can tell the species apart by the colorations of each leaf. And then in the middle of them, the flower comes out.
The conservatory also plays host to special exhibitions throughout the year. A highlight is the acclaimed annual Orchid Show. It's the largest exhibition of orchids in the country, displaying thousands of these celebrated plants.
Orchid enthusiasts come and photographers come, and people come to really learn about why these plants are so different, what makes them so unique.
Another popular attraction in the conservatory is the annual train show, which has delighted visitors during the winter holiday season for over 20 years. It is a magical landscape with more than a dozen model trains zigzagging around 140 replicas of iconic New York bridges and buildings, all constructed entirely out of plant materials.
We started this with only a few buildings of important New York landmarks, and over more than 20 years it's grown into its own universe.
Favorites include the Empire State Building, Yankee Stadium, and even this iconic conservatory.
It's such a grand old building. It is really, I think, the most beautiful, most remarkable conservatory in the world.
Outside the conservatory, a sprawling 250-acre landscape awaits, with over 1 million plants growing in 50 gardens and individual collections, on display year-round for anyone to enjoy.
The garden here is really a museum of plants. If you think about a museum, you think about looking at beautiful paintings or maybe a sculpture, but when you come here, if you really look at the plants, you'll see that they are every bit as beautiful as any painting that you can see.
Kristen Schleider curates all the outdoor gardens and plant collections.
This is the Peggy Rockefeller Rose Garden, designed in 1916 by Beatrix Ferran. It contains more than 4,000 roses, over 600 varieties. As you can see, the garden is laid out in a triangular shape. There are 83 triangular beds and 3 main aisles that lead all to a beautiful center gazebo that Beatrix Ferrand herself designed. This is the Rock Garden. It's one of the oldest gardens here at the New York Botanical Garden. It was designed in the late 1930s by T.H. Everett. Many people think of a rock garden as simply plants that grow in very high alpine sites, but he defined it as a garden that is filled with any plants that look great with rocks. Up the top of mountains, as the snow and the glaciers melt, you have all this water that sort of runs down and seeps into really rocky soil. We've duplicated that as best we can. And there, as you can see, the stream that runs through some very rocky soil. And since it's their natural sort of habitat, we've put lots of high alpine plants here.
Like works of art that have come to life, these gardens abound with beauty. And on a hillside in spring, one particular garden shows its true colors.
We're in the azalea garden. We have over 3,000 azalea and rhododendron, which are so beautiful in early May. But that's only the beginning of the azalea garden. What I think makes this place so special is the fabulous collection of other trees and shrubs that run throughout its 11 acres.
The most recent addition to the landscape is the native plant garden, with a 230-foot-long water feature at its center. This modern garden was built with sustainability in mind.
In the native plant garden, we worked really hard to put the right plant in the right place, to match the growing conditions that plants prefer with the site. That's one of the ways we made this garden sustainable. If you have the right plant in the right place, you don't have to fight it, you don't have to overwater it, and you don't have to replace it 1,000 times either. We have birds here nesting and eating the seeds. We have butterflies. It's really just been so wonderful to see all of the nature come to the garden.
The garden is constantly changing through the cycle of the seasons and growing in new ways every day. A visit any day of the year is a chance to be surrounded by life. But the garden is not only dedicated to showcasing plants that are alive. Tucked away and hidden deep within this building is an extraordinary history of the plant kingdom, an archive rarely ever seen by most visitors. This herbarium holds a trove of over 7 million dried plants that have been collected for centuries from around the world. Like an encyclopedia, botanists use these preserved specimens as a reference to help identify and name newly discovered plants. This is the largest herbarium in the Western Hemisphere, and it is managed by Barbara Tiers.
When the plant specimens first arrive at the garden, they come in here, right from the field. And those are waiting to be identified. Sometimes it takes a few months for specimens to be identified. Sometimes it takes 50 years. It depends on whether or not that plant group has a specialist. All of these plants are already identified, and they're just waiting their turn to go up to the mounting room, where they'll be glued to paper and then eventually filed in the herbarium.
The collection represents a centuries-old practice of drying newly discovered plants, gluing them to paper, and recording them in an archive. The mounting room staff can go through 5 gallons of glue every week. The specimens offer a unique look into the past.
Here's a specimen that was collected by Charles Darwin. And in this case, the specimen is actually not even a flowering plant, it's a tiny moss that he collected on the voyage of the Beagle. Here's one that's even older. Here's a specimen from the Captain Cook voyage, which went around the Cape of Good Hope and Cape Horn in the 1700s. You can tell from this specimen, really, if you were to just show that to a botanist, they wouldn't know if it was collected 10 years ago or 2 centuries ago. As long as they're kept dry and flat and away from bug damage, they last indefinitely.
To this day, botanists in the field are still sending 30 to 50,000 new plant specimens a year to the herbarium. It is just one of the many ways the garden has led the world in plant science. Since its inception, the garden has been a hub for scientists, sending them on field expeditions to discover new species and providing facilities in which to study them. Even Thomas Edison conducted research here in the 1920s, searching for a domestic source of rubber. Today, scientists at the garden work in a state-of-the-art laboratory, studying plants on a molecular level, sequencing their DNA, and understanding how they are related to each other.
So how is it that we have maybe 400,000 species of plants? How did that happen? Why did it happen? Where did it happen?
Asking questions like these has always been at the core of the garden's science program. Today, it is a global operation, with a herbarium being digitized into an online database so that scientists around the world may easily access its collection. And from the laboratory to field research, the goal still remains to discover and identify the world's plants in order to conserve them.
We may be pushing somewhere between 20 and 30% of the world's plant species into an inexorable decline in the road to extinction. We simply can't think constructively about how to conserve a group of organisms when we don't know what they are.
Conservation awareness is the cornerstone of the garden's mission, and for a garden in the middle of a city, that mission poses an even greater challenge.
We have quite a set of serious responsibilities, I think, as an institution, as the next generation comes online. And they are very removed from the natural world.
To reconnect the next generation with nature, the Children's Gardening Program gives school children the chance to tend their own plots and learn about the life cycle of plants.
Alyssa, you have a trowel, and you're going to hook your trowel. And that's what you hook.
They're just finding these things for the first time. It never gets old watching a kid pull a, tug on the leaves of a carrot and come up with the root.
This is a super long carrot.
By planting, picking, and preparing, children discover the joys of eating food they've grown themselves.
There were some school children, and they were all picking vegetables and making a salad. And this one little girl said, oh, this is the Kenesha salad. And I said, oh, well, why is it called that? She said, well, that's my name, and I grew the vegetables. I pick it, and I bring it home, and that's my mom calls it salad when I bring it home. And that just, I just thought that was just fabulous. I just think seeing it through children's eyes sometimes is really makes you realize it's very simple, but it's very, very important.
And for children growing up in an urban environment, getting their hands in the dirt provides valuable lessons about conservation.
People are kind of waking up to, where does this food come from? Who grew this? Is it healthy? How could I grow it? Can you do this with your own hands? Does it taste better? Urban children are asking those questions.
And for visitors of all ages, the garden fosters a deeper connection to nature.
We just hope that people will learn about plants and learn to love them as much as we do, and that will make them better and more thoughtful citizens.
And I hope that they're inspired to go back to wherever they're from, whether it's Brooklyn or Bangladesh, and be a little bit more committed, a little bit more engaged with nature and plants and the environment.
It is the same fundamental goal shared by the garden's founders, who long ago conceived of a place to cultivate, study, and conserve the natural world.
You feel like it's Eden for me sometimes, and I think what a remarkable thing we're doing here, to be able to grow these incredible tropical plants in the middle of New York. How great is that? It's just really amazing.
When people go through and stroll through the garden, they're getting a picture of beauty. They're getting all the landscape, the artistic view of the plant world, but they're also seeing the tremendous diversity of those plants. And so that's a big part of what science is doing. It's trying to understand that and then relay that to the general public.
Whether you're just looking for peace or whether you're looking to pursue a passion in a specific sort of plant, any New Yorker can come here and find something to just spur them on to greater pursuit of their passion.
That passion for plants is what has grown this garden into one of the city's premier cultural institutions, where anyone can come and enjoy,
and now this is how I do it.
Learn, and explore the unlimited beauty of nature.
The garden has a kind of ineffable charm. Maybe it's partly the historic landscape, the conservatory itself, the set of gardens. something will sweep you away. It's really like no other place.
Year after year, season after season, the New York Botanical Garden, with its vast collection of plants, continues to delight visitors from all over the world. And the garden will always be an important place for conservation and learning, to ensure the future of the plant kingdom for many generations to come. I'm Sigourney Weaver. Thank you for watching Treasures of New York, the New York Botanical Garden.
This program was made possible by Louis B. and Louise Hirschfeld Kuhlman and Rosalind P. Walter.